Hello, everyone. Welcome to Don't Be Cinderella, where we talk about creating your own future. I am Rowena Kuo, and I have with me the wonderful Amber Garland. And
Hi.
we have a very special guest today, Diana Estell. Diana, you are wonderful. You are an author
Yes, I
and
am.
uh, extraordinaire. Tell us a little
Oh,
about
thank you.
yourself.
Well, I'm married and I have two girls, um, both adults now, which is sad. And yes, I am an author and been writing off and on and more on since I was probably about 7 years old.
So tell us about how your life was growing up. Tell
So
us
I, oh,
your
sorry.
Cinderella. Tell us your Cinderella story.
Oh, that's okay. So I grew up in a very loving family. Uh, my dad was military of I mean, his career was military. Then he, started his own business. So, and I grew up in the church, and I really had a really good, I would say, idyllic childhood until it became not idyllic
Yeah.
childhood. And then I don't know how much I can go into this, but so anyway, I had
We
some.
have 2 hours. Please just
Oh,
tell
okay.
us.
Well, I mean, I mean, I'm not used to, Rowena, so you know about this. So anyway, but well, so at the age of like, I don't know, 12 or 15, I had some abusive issues, not with my family, but with another individual, unfortunately. And so that went on for quite a long time, well, 3 years. And then, praise God, that ended. And my idyllic childhood, the innocence was gone. I unfortunately was put into a world of shame and fear and goodness knows what, and didn't believe in God then at that point. Well, I believed in God, but I just didn't believe that God could take care of a 12-year-old. I mean, if he couldn't take care of a 12-year-old, then honestly, what's the point? So I floundered, needless to say, just kind of doing my own thing, trying to map out what I could, how to resurrect the dead soul in my body, which I mean, at that point I hated men especially, uh, and and then not many years later, my dad passed away. My mom had issues that needed to be taken care of, and so our family that was very idyllic fractured. My dad was like the bedrock of our family, and my it's not a slam against my mom. She just had a totally different role and extremely patient. One of my characters is kind of based off of her. So very, very patient, and she still is that way. But for all intents and purposes, our family just kind of fractured. So I was on my own yet again, and
And how old were you at the time?
oh man, at that point I would have been 21, almost
Mm.
22, and then I went to college, and and then I went to college. Stayed with one of my aunts, and they were very, very kind, but I just had this desire to really leave my home state of Missouri. And looking back now, it's a beautiful state, but at that time I needed to flee. I think I just wanted to flee myself, flee from whoever I was. I was always creative, and I was told after my dad died that I can't worry about that stuff anymore because it's not going to put food on the table. You know what I mean? It's just, that kind of stuff is gone. And so, I went to California. That's where I moved. And looking back, it was it God's will? But it was God's will in so many ways. But at that point, I was living with another uncle in their house, and they sold it right out from under me, which it's their choice. It is not like they were, but at that point, I literally had nowhere to go, and I was in my car for a long time, or however long it was, I don't know, and just living off of whatever food I could get, and I don't mean with money. It's sad to say, but that's the way it was, and so. We didn't have cell phones at the time, so I could just call my brothers or whatever. It was way before that. We had that. And then I don't know how long passed by. So I wasn't in contact with my mom or anything like that. So I don't know how long passed by, and I got this knock on my glass door. Now, of course, I couldn't drive anywhere because I couldn't afford to drive. I couldn't even turn on the car. So I had to, actually manually open it, and they said, how long have you been out here? And I said, I don't know. I don't know. And so they asked me if I wanted to come into their house, and they actually had a condo, to get a shower or a bath. And honestly, it wouldn't have mattered if it was Ted Bundy going in there, because I was already dead. In my mind, I was emotionally dead. I already felt used and abused, so I was already gone. So it wouldn't have mattered. I just thought, okay, I'll get a good meal, clean up, and then we could just, I don't know, just, I don't do me in. I remember sleeping in their loft, and it was a beautiful place. I mean, obviously to me, it was like Shangri-La, and it actually was a nice place. And that evening was a Wednesday, because I remember they were going to church and they invited me to go. And I said, who goes to church on a Wednesday? Jesus is on Sundays, and so they took me to this church. It didn't matter to me. I just thought, okay, well, it's somewhere warm, because I just thought, okay, I'll just wind up going in the car afterwards. So to my time, I was just biding time, just getting out of the car, seeing some sights. So they took me there, and it didn't do anything, whatever. So I was going to go back in the car, and they're like, no, you're not going to go in the car. You're going to stay with us. And I'm like, I can't pay you. And they're like, this ain't about money. So they, I don't know how long that went by. And then I'd go to church with them, and kind of just went with them wherever they were doing, going grocery shopping or whatever, because where did I have to go? And so then one Sunday, and I don't know how long it goes, and I think if I remember right, the minister was Rick Warren. At least that's the name I remember seeing, in his sandals and his Bermuda shorts, and tons of people in this church. And I knew instantly I was the sinner. I knew that what happened to me was not my fault, though it took years of therapy to really dig that in my soul. But I knew it wasn't my fault, but yet I knew the things that I've also done were part afterwards. I had I had some, of course, I'm a sinner regardless. So I gave my life to Jesus at that time, and I remember kneeling, and like I said, it was probably thousands of people, and it didn't matter. I just felt like God was talking to me, like I was the only one in the room. So I went up front, and I kneeled, and I made a true confession. And I remember telling God, I only have to offer you tears and shame and guilt and fear. And so I said, but if you take me, I'll be yours. And so I really, at that moment, I felt like my whole DNA just changed.
It's amazing.
But
That's
and so
amazing.
then they introduced me to my forever family, which we're still in contact to this day. And their mission was to take in people off the streets, either drug abuse, unwed mothers, homeless, or a combination of all three, or whatever combination. And there were a lot of people that were on, God knows what they were on. And of course, I mean, my situation was just as bleak. And but they never wanted money for me. They have never asked for money for me. They just gave me a place to stay. I slept in one of their kids' rooms. I remember her trying to sneak out of the house and telling me, don't tell my mom. I'm like, oh, great. So, and then there were people that were, on coke, and got, anyway. So so that changed my life. They helped me. I had a job then in Cedar Sinai in LA. And then I aunt in Illinois said, Diana, you wanted to be a nurse. I actually went there to go to nursing school in USC. And she said, why don't you move here? So I moved back, and my whole goal was to move back to California. I didn't want to go back to the Midwest for the rest of my life. Well, of course, I met Mr. Wright. And then Mr. Wright came along, and we got married, and we've been married now for 29 years, almost 29 years. Two beautiful kids later, and but there's still baggage, right? There's still areas of healing. So the Lord, I don't know how much more I can talk about that, because I don't want to bore you guys to tears, or
Love it.
It's a
Love your
fantastic,
story.
fantastic story. And it shows that there are people out there who are willing to help, to
Mhm.
offer a helping
Yeah.
hand to those in
Yeah.
need. So
Mhm.
if you're not Cinderella, be the fairy godmother, be the Prince
Oh,
Charming and help
oh my
somebody.
goodness. Yes, I had fairy godmothers. My husband was Prince Charming, and I had a lot of ladies in waiting, I would say. You know,
Angels in disguise.
angels as disguise. I mean, so, I mean, it took years and years. I mean, I brought, counseling and yeah. So, there was some things that God was, pruning and showing me that those things weren't my fault. Obviously that we're all sinners. I don't mean like that, but, so
Mhm.
yeah. So
It is
God's,
a process, isn't it?
it is a process and God is amazingly well, right?
Hmm.
For that.
Hmm. I like what you said, take me and I'll be yours.
Yes.
Because it's such a commitment.
It
Yeah.
is a spiritual commitment. And I'm a lifer. I'm in it for life and to eternal,
Finisher,
wonderful, a
right?
finisher. Yes, the finisher
Yeah.
of my faith.
Hmm.
Yes.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. I often wondered, and here's another book. I don't know if I'm ever going to write it, but I often wondered who I would have been had that not have happened. Because I was in martial arts. Well, my dad was. We really believe he was CIA or some kind of high something. I mean, he just did. We don't know, but I mean, that's kind of been thrown around. But and so we were, we had guns in the house, so we could not get to it. And I grew up with knives, and when I was after that abuse, I actually slept with knives. It sounds really bad, and I wouldn't advocate it, but that's just the way I was. That's just how I reacted to it. And so I was in martial arts, and then out of fear and just gumption of protection, I dug into every style I could get into. I became this little ninja because I was never going to let that happen again.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
never going to be anybody's victim ever again. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I mean, I still have those skills. I never want to use them. You don't never want to use them. It's like CPR. You never want to use it. But yeah, so that kind of
You
became
have it,
my
Kristen.
yeah. And then I actually started teaching it, but I wouldn't teach it. I'm so glad that I never taught it when I was going through that healing process, because what kind of sensei would I have been? I've been pouring on my grief and anger and fear into them. So I'm so glad that the opportunity came on post after the Lord was doing work, because I didn't want to. I'm so glad I did not put on. Do you know what I'm saying? Put
Yes.
Yeah.
on grief and a fear
Right.
that was unwarranted.
Hmm. It's impeccable timing.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So then how did you get into writing?
Oh my goodness. So thank the Lord. God's given me a voice. I was 7 years old when I remember, to my knowledge, which I want to resurrect some of these old stories if I can find them or write them. But
Love
I don't
stories.
know. I was always just writing things. My head was a little bit above the clouds, still is. And I was always kind of like the little journalist in my family. Like if my brothers, we played office or whatever, I was either the journalist, the secretary, but I was always taking down stuff. Lover of words, love dictionaries, would devour books. I still devour books and just devoured words and make my own words. And then, the years when my family, well-meaning, and I don't mean I love all my cousins and whatever, and just other friends that told me, that kind of stuff in your head, you just really can't be doing it now. You gotta, get on with life. That stuff never leaves you. Those dreams are just dreams deferred or dreams in dormant, but it doesn't mean that God has left your dreams. So I
Mhm.
think I had to have seasons of between being saved both physically and spiritually into where I started writing my novel, Abyss of the Fallen. I could not have wrote it without some time passing, for whatever reason. And Dagon in my character was the guardian in my world, in my mind, unfortunately when that abuse was taking place. And so I created him out of just to escape and to have some kind of a protector, because
Refuge.
obviously in my mind, God wasn't doing it. My dad, of course, he didn't know. So years went by. I mean, many years went by. I started writing it in 2010. I had this idea. And then that guardian was like, where were you? And I remember physically talking to, he didn't even have a name, Rowena, but I'd like, where were you? And I was actually angry at this person, pissed if I can say it. And I'm like, where were you? You know? And so then I was going to write it in my perspective, but then I started thinking about, well, maybe he couldn't find me. Maybe he couldn't help me. Why couldn't he help me? And then his voice started popping into my mind, you know, where I, of course, you know, we know they're not real, but there is a kind of a realness that they have. It's hard to explain. But so little by little, his voice started creeping in, and then his story came out to why. And of course, Mary is in me in my book to a certain degree. So through him explaining why he couldn't be there, wasn't because he didn't want to be there, because he couldn't be there, which drives him to whole other issues of, you know, depression and whatnot. So it was
So give us a quick premise of what your book is about.
okay. So my book, so The Abyss of the Fallen, really is Dagon's story of him trying to save the woman that he really loves from hell. He was a part of the fall of humanity. He wasn't the instigator, but he was a part of it. And he just feels, you know, he'd give anything to undo it, but that's really what you're watching. You're watching his progression to redemption, but you're also watching his, you know, and he's very pragmatic. He doesn't really care about us right now. He's gonna get two hangs. But for her, the world starts and ends with her. So that's his desire, is to save her from hell. He doesn't know how, doesn't have a rule book, but you know.
He will. He will, whatever
he
it
does.
takes.
He will.
Yeah. Whatever it takes, right?
Yes, he just don't know it yet.
So in the book, you have Dagon, who is a fallen angel.
Yes.
And he has all this money. Right? So
yes.
tell us how he gets all his money.
Well, you know, he plays the stock market because he can hear thoughts. He can
financially literate.
He can hear when deals go down, when Egypt, which actually when Cleopatra, when she died, there was a huge economic crash, legit, in the BC era. So he cashed in on that thing. He did arbitrage, you know, he would exchange currency when Rome pooped out. He was pocketing money since eons.
Could you put in a good word for all of us? Well,
I know.
Pipeline Mr. Dagon.
It's called I don't know, distribution issues, which will get sorted out. But anyway, I have a friend from Japan that lived with us for about a year, and he said, you know, one day Dagon's going to have to take care of you. I'm like, yeah, he is. Right?
He will. He'll take care of you.
Oh, he will, and he is. Bless us.
So in the book, you also mentioned like a legend of ruby. So is that one of the riches, or being part of? Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Being part of that war. Tell us the history of that war. You did a lot of research.
Oh, a lot of research. Yes.
Yes.
So I actually have a degree in anthropology and cultural anthropology. So I love researching. That was really my desire, just to sit in the Field Museum in a windowless room, sit there plucking away. I would have been the Peachy King, but obviously God had different route for me. But just to kind of deviate, none of my professors were shocked when I told them that I got published. They all knew. They said there's no other student that got so emotionally invested in an outline like you did. So, which was true. So I loved researching. I always have. I'm a researcher at heart. I was like that as a kid, you know, whatever. So, but the ruby is actually in Queen Elizabeth's state crown. Okay. And so
Hmm.
we were actually able to see it when we toured the Tower of London. And it's not always on display. If she's opening a Parliament, it's on display. But it was on display, and there it was, and it just sent. So that really was the beginning of my book, even before I asked Dagan, well, this nameless guy, where were you? So, and jewels are always powerful, you know, crowns are a symbol of authority. So I thought to myself, I'm going to do some research about this stone. So I don't know if I accurately, Rowena, I'm going to lay down where I think it came from at some point. It's too long now, but anyway, just suffice it to say, people died over it. And that's Agincourt. When I wrote about Agincourt in 1415, that ruby fell out of King Henry's crown, and they were fighting over it. So, and I don't know if this is a book one, but I don't know if I wrote it. If not, I'm going to put it in book two, where Sevilla tells Dagan, don't worry, they're going to bleed over this thing, and they do. And so, but that was his, in my mind, that was his invested ruby when he became a guardian of Eden for lack of a better word, but I call it the first land. This is before he fell. And so that stone was split, which in history they really think it was split, and it went and it was in the earth, and it was a gift to us, if you will, as a beacon of hope, that because Dagan's title is Guardian of Light, and so yeah.
So one part of the ruby is in England with the Queen, and the other one is the one that you focus on in your book.
Well, the other one, so there's two. There's two. The stone. So I believe there's two stones. They really believe that there's two stones, because the way it was cleaved indicated that there had to be two. Okay. So one is the stone of kings and one is the stone of power. So Mark has a stone of power, and the rulers of Britain have the stone of kings. So both will wind up being in there. I focus on the stone of power because Mark is the one of the other focus, but they're both in there.
So the first time I met you, you were just start, and you, how many times did you?
It's embarrassing to talk. It's so embarrassing. I'm so looking back. I in this file I have the manuscript where you wrote on it in 2000 and I don't even know 11, whenever it was, and I remember bringing you this story. And I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I wish I never did, but I'm glad I did now, because you learn as you go. But I think I brought it, I don't know. Where did I get contracted? 2018, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 7 years?
7 years. You were working on it.
Over and over. But I almost,
over and over.
There was a part I thought about quitting, because I don't know what author spoke at Right to Publish, this, like one of the keynote speakers, but he physically, and you may remember this, Rowena, maybe not, but he said, if any of you are pitching your old, tired out stories, you may want to think of writing another. Now the blood drained cold, because I thought, God, that's what I've been doing. I mean, that's what I've been doing. And so I thought to myself, and I cried in the car. I really just wept, because I thought, goodness, have I been wasting my time? Because you don't know if anyone's going to take it. Let's be real, you don't.
Yeah.
So I prayed in that car, and I cried, and I just was like, boy, this is for pride. Just let me quit, because this is just not worth it. Not worth the pride. So I said, so I thought, and there was something in me that just really felt like it had to be told. Not that no other author doesn't feel that, I know that, but there was just something for me that I felt like I needed to keep going. I didn't know why. I couldn't have proved it to save my soul, but there was just something there. And lo and behold, Rowena, how bizarre, how God that you, the first one who read it is the last one to take it. Because I did get rejection letters, Oh yeah.
Well, it just needed some fine tuning. It just needed some fine tuning.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's the learning process. That's where I've been so blessed to have you and so many people, but I was always dedicated to learning, trying to be a student versus an authority of anything, you know. I mean, you
think
have to
I
have a
know.
willing heart.
I think I know what kept you going. When you said the words beacon of hope, that just stuck. Yep,
Yeah.
could be a beacon of hope to anyone that comes across it. That's probably why.
Yes, yes. In fact, what's so beautiful, well, in this time that I wrote it, so I started writing in 2010, and of course got a contract in 2018. I think like 2011, I wrote this scene where Dagan was basically self-harming, right, Rowena?
Yes.
And at the time, it's a shock. I mean, I was like, what in the world is this about? And I mean, I mean, it was so stunning. And of course, looking back now, it's not as it just these things kind of run in my family, the addiction issues, the depression issues, self-harm and whatnot. And so I think God was opening up another door that would move beyond me, you know, that had nothing to do with me, but had stuff to do with me. And so all the guilt that Dagan feels from not being able to take care of Mary or not be able to save her, hear her, or whatever, caused him immense deep grief, which is basically depression, and he doesn't know how to deal with these emotions. I mean, he's not, I mean, there's a lot of people that don't know how to deal with emotions, so he lashed out on himself for a lack of a better understanding, and that would be his regular MO, to go to that, because
It's a coping mechanism.
it is a coping mechanism. That it runs in my family, and every book has a hotline now. And in fact, Rowena, we talked about it numerous times about doing that. And we were onto something. In fact, when I met with one of the distributors of Barnes and Noble, they said there's very few, if any, books in this genre that have that, where it's in a story. I mean, we need all kinds. We need real stories. We need, hope. But in a fictional story, it's very unlikely to see. And she said, we need to see more of these. So I think God was onto something there,
So then how did you address it? How do you address that pain and that suffering? How does your character deal with it?
Because love is greater.
Man.
When evil became stronger, I knew that love had to be bigger than that. Love had to be more powerful than that. Hope had to be more powerful than that. And Mary was Dagan knew God, he saw God, but yet when he fell, he just really thought that, this is all kind of done. And Mary wound up being the one that would kind of challenge him, like, what do you mean this is done? You have your title, you have this, that, and the other thing. And, because he was so ancient, held this wisdom, he would kind of just brush her off. But he was in her way, she's helping him in a more profound way that he probably wouldn't have had. In fact, one of my daughters asked me, she said, how does Mary deal with him? And I said, well, she just loves him. That's it. And that's it.
So then it's the power of love. And
I know it's not as I don't mean love is not a simplistic term, because I know that just because we're saved doesn't mean we don't have problems. It doesn't mean that people don't need to have medicine or be in a hospital or like that. But when you have family around you, and even there can be issues, but love just really overpowers a lot of that, if not to bring understanding to loved ones who suffer with that, because it is not an easy thing to always fix. You know what I'm saying? It's a journey. So I don't want people to have a delusion that, love, it does conquer all, but there's still, it's a journey. You know what I'm saying? If that makes any sense.
And a decision too.
Yes, and a decision. Love is stronger, and the darkness, light can never quench out, can never overcome the dark, or the light.
Very true.
Yeah. All right, I think I said it wrong. You know what I'm saying.
Love it.
The darkness cannot overcome the light.
Yes.
Right.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love the picture behind you.
Tell us about that picture.
That is, I think, from Germany. It's an oil painting. I'm not sure how old it is. It's, the angel with the kids going over the bridge.
Yeah.
And my
That's a bridge?
sister-in-law,
Wow.
yeah, isn't that funny? I never thought about that, but I have bridges in my book. There you go. That's
I-
That
related.
sounds
I
like
just-
what happens in your book. That's
Doesn't
why
it? Doesn't it? I didn't
yeah.
even think about it. till
Okay,
now.
You have to tell me about that because today I received word from church that I was crossing a bridge. So, and I'm going
my
to get to the end of the bridge. So,
you're
tell me
so-
about
so-
Bridget.
So in my book, Dagan has this image. This is before Sevilla, or this evil character, and Dagan gets kicked out of the Golden Land, or he says, give her the old heave ho. And so he has this image of this woman crossing this bridge.
Oh my gosh.
Now, so this evil character, Sevilla, she kind of like takes her hand, and this bridge just not blows up, but this bridge separates, if you will, heaven and earth. And there's people falling, but they're very much alive, and they're either wailing or something. And Mary comes over to the edge at this precipice and just covers her ears because the screaming is just immense. But yet she didn't fall. So, and at that moment is when Dagan fell in love with her, and now he looks to God and says, can I have a timeout? Can we undo this? Because clearly I made a mistake. Well, no. So he leaves, and that's when he decides to, hides her in her heart. So this bridge is sin, and the repair is, of course, Jesus.
It's cool.
So you've been on an epic journey, and
Yes.
to have just the right timing. It seems to be everything about
Yes.
having somebody to come into your life and help you out.
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, immensely. Yeah, there's no way.
So what kinds of things would you say is the problem with America today about the struggle with pain?
I told me and my daughter, we were talking to some homeless people. I mean, I used to be homeless, so we had talking to them, and I told her, and I say this loosely because it's not to overgeneralize, but there are people that don't see beyond the dirt. You know what I'm saying? They don't see the human behind the hunger, or the human behind whatever it is. And so I told Darian, I said, sometimes you have to have different eyes. You have to have your heart, you have to have a different glasses on to see
Sure.
them properly, and I'm not saying, obviously there are people that do that, so that's right. I don't want to overgeneralize, but I also think that, I don't think it's easy to talk about suffering. It's hard for people to open up, let alone to your own self. I mean, I've lied to myself for years about my problem. Oh, I don't have depression. And, when I was diagnosed with ADHD as an older adult, sorry. And, there again lies some interesting aspects of my childhood. But, I think we've made a lot more strides in, different, I know I have an activist mentality. I've always had, even when I was broken, I found a lot of time where I would wind up helping other people in various capacities, even though I had no capacity to help myself. And so, I've always had a humanitarian kind of activism in my head. So that's why I probably have decided that, obviously I wish that didn't happen to me. I don't recommend it, but it is what it is. And God uses everything for his glory. Everything means bad things and good things.
Yeah. We have a leader that we, listen to every time. His name is Ed Milet. And he said, everything happens for you, not to you. And I think, one of the things that I see that have happened in your life, and you're here. You're here to share and, be a beacon of hope.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
awesome.
miracle. It's a miracle in a lot of ways. You know, a lot of ways. I mean, God
Eh,
clearly had a purpose. Well, he has a
yeah.
purpose for all of us, right? So, you
Yeah.
know, I'm no exception. But I mean, I'm glad that I say this to Rowena all the time, but it's been very, very grateful to have
Mhm.
my voice being read in a book. It shocks me still to this day. It's not a. I don't think I'll ever get beyond that, and I hope I never do. It's very humbling.
I liked what you said about Amber, about having to make
Mhm.
a decision to change your life. And I think that a lot of people, you know, they come to a crossroads and
Oh,
they
right.
don't know what to do.
No.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. 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 Mhm.
No, it's true. And either from bad advice, good advice, or there's just so many things, people that struggle with addiction issues or, depression or whatever it is. Sometimes you just don't want to get help, I mean, it's just the reality. I mean, but, you know, and so eventually, I just, that's why, I mean, I really hope that, I mean, one of my prayers is that, me and my daughter have an opportunity to hook up with this one Christian. I mean, he's a Christian. He's a rock artist, but and to praying for to have a kindred. And I don't mean anything with you, Rowena, please. That's not what I'm saying. But like outside of the publishing house, to have a kindred spirit to move this hope and break down stigma in a very public place, as much as I can humanly.
Mhm.
You know,
So your hero, you have told me, is Kurt Cobain.
it's
Tell
very
me,
much so Kurt Cobain.
it still
It's the
is.
bizarrest
So
thing.
tell us about
Oh,
why.
good grief, it's so bizarre. So, well, I say it's bizarre. So, I mean, I was a punk chick. I mean, grew up with Sex Pistols, The Clash, and then went into grunge and all this stuff. And, I knew a lot about him. Well, I wouldn't say that. Who knows anybody unless they know somebody, right? But I mean, I knew the music, I knew the band, and I knew the other bands in that area in that time frame. And so, of course, years later goes by, and it was my oldest daughter who actually brought this to my attention. I mean, he passed away in 1994, so there's a lot of, I mean, let's face it, that's a lot of years. And so she's 24 now. I think she would have maybe been 16, 15, and we were in Forever 21. So I'm going to pitch that out for Forever 21. And I was working with an artist to work on a book cover, because at that point I didn't know if I had self-publish or who knows what it would be. So, and I met with this artist, real good artist, and he said, I think that your character reminds me of Jim Morrison or somebody famous that died, a rock star. I'm like, I didn't tell him that Dagan Isley has a rock star reality trait, but it didn't mean anything to me at that time. About that same week, me and my daughter were in Forever 21. She was looking for a shirt or whatever because she was going to be in a musical. And she held this shirt. I had to buy it one day. She held this shirt and she said, Mom, this is your character. And I went, and it was Kurt Cobain. Within about 30 seconds to a minute, the other guy, artist, texted me and said, yeah, he's Kurt Cobain. And I went, okay. I showed that to Ashton, and she went, I'm like, I don't know. So, and then, I always liked him as a singer. We were exactly the same age. We were 8 days apart from each other. He would have been in my class had he graduated and been in this state. And then even there was just a lot of funny things that was kind of going on with that. And looking back, I mean, Dagan and him have so much like. There's a book, a little story I wrote, My Brother Dragle, where Dagan sees him as his long lost brother because it was so goofy. So, but then I started, and me and my oldest daughter talked about this recently. I think the reason that this all came about was to give me a better understanding about mental illness, because lo and behold, he had struggles, but and I don't want to harp on the mental illness with him because he was a person, I don't want to harp on that. I like to talk about his art versus the problems he had, because we all have problems. Obviously, look what happened to me. So I started learning a little bit about him, and now I know way too much. I don't know if it's, who knows if it's true. I mean, as much as a human can learn about somebody. I've never met him, and of course he's not living. So and then and I know I can say this safely. I know that my youngest daughter, first time she had to go into rehab, I had on a Kurt Cobain shirt. I just threw on clothes, took her to the rehab, and I had a teen come up to me and said, "Hey, I like that shirt. That's really cool." And then she came back around and she started talking to me. Not that that was shocking, but she started telling me things. She said, "I don't know why I'm telling you this stuff." And I went, but whenever I wore these shirts, there would be so many people that would come up and open up to me. And I always encourage them, of course, talk to your parents, your therapist, or whoever. And I started having a rapport with these so-called misfits, or people on the fringe, or people that loved emo music or goth music or whatever. And I told my husband, I'm like, this guy, this singer, and I know it's God's, I know that's not what I'm saying, has opened up a door for me to walk through, to resonate with the youth, with the old people, with the young spirit. And it wound up breaking down barriers for whatever reason. They think you understand, even if you don't. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like you walk in, you have your ripped jeans, you're wearing this, I have a choker on, and they think you understand them, whether you have no clue or not. And that has provided a way for them to open up. And that is what I really, really am thankful for him too. Now, obviously, he didn't have a real hand in it. I don't mean like that. But you know what I'm saying? There was just a deeper understanding that my oldest daughter said, "Mom, I don't know if you would have totally understand what was going on with Darian had that not have happened." I mean, I would like to think I would, and I hope I'm not stepping out of bounds with my daughters. I mean, I know them, but you know what I'm saying? I don't want to get into what's going on with that because it's their story, it's not mine, but just trying to relay some information without stepping on. So sorry. Well, you know what I'm saying, because they're all interwoven, right? It's like, how do you separate one from the other?
Yeah, they're all part of you and you're part of them.
But I want to be respectful
I understand.
of theirs. I mean, that's not my story to tell. So anyway, so then of course, I have all their CDs, and now I got, I had Dagan, his Onyx ring. Little did I know he had a very similar. It just goes on and on. It gets goofy. Mm-hmm. And then my nephew, who's loves guitars, he's a good guitarist in his own right. I don't know, this 2013, I don't know when it was. And I said, I need to have a guitar for my character to be using. And he's like, "Okay, what kind of style?" I said, "Punk, punk music." And he said, "Oh, put him in the one that Cobain used." And I texted him back and I called him. I said, "Did I tell you about this freaky stuff?" And he's like, "No." I said, "He could have put him in anything." Sid Vicious, or he didn't play, he could have been in anyone, someone from Fugazi, someone from God knows what, and so anyway, so my daughter was there and she said, "Yeah, this is just kind of spooky." So I don't know. So there became a kindred spirit. Take that as it is. I don't know what to make of it. I just think it's a connection to understanding.
And you're able to talk to anybody. You're able to to openly converse with people who come up to you.
Yeah, that is, I think, what happened. What happened is because little did I know that our world was going to have situations where we were going to have to encounter very similar situations that happened to him. It happens to a lot of people. It's not just to him. It happens to other people. and that ran in my family. And he apparently gave his life to Jesus at the age of 17. And he just had a lot of genetic and issues, and but he was a brilliant, all accounts, he was a very loving, very generous, very funny individual, and very creative. It's just, the way things were. And, and now we know more about certain things, and, yeah.
So you say that you call yourself an activist. What is it that you are for? What are you activist about?
Well, so when I did research over in Kenya for a while, I wound up my thesis, or my research kind of changed to that of orphans. I have I would say a little bit of a nursing background, not like what you have, Rowena, but I mean, I ran a little clinic, and lo and behold, almost a lot of them were orphans. And so I went home, changed, and I just hit it, like, raising money, doing whatever. I gave talks to some ambassadors in Kenya and Tanzania and South Africa about raising taxes. And so I that water relief, of course, understanding of, of course, being kind and being nice to people, and putting your action to where you believe. And of course, now it's mental illness, being a champion of that. But to me, it's always been to bring hope. I mean, I don't think I recognized it at the time, but looking back, I mean, the umbrella for me, if I had an umbrella, would just say hope on it.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds to me you are a person or people advocate.
Yes,
things
yes.
that will get their lives for the better, or at least end suffering.
Oh yeah, tremendously. And the other person I always really, really admired was Princess Diana. I mean, she was one that I've always admired. And she was, she would say, I would be up in the parts of England, listening to, people that were battered and, homeless and whatnot. And she had a very, very giving heart. That's just who she was, even as a child. I mean, that was nothing because she had a royal title. That's just who she was. So, I mean, she was an example. Of course, I don't know, Mother Teresa, seriously, really. So, she was a beautiful person who gave up their time. But the biggest, of course, the ultimate is Jesus Christ himself, the servant who didn't need to be served, a servant, but was.
In your book, you have a story about the Oracle of Delphi. How did you manage to, how did you come upon that?
Oh, that's so funny. So, okay, so I love history. I've never been to Greece. One day I want to go to Greece. I've traveled.
Oh, I'll come with.
Oh yeah, definitely go.
Let's go.
I had an opportunity, but we were already going on vacation to go to Greece. So, well, that was just my imaginations of David has been all over the world looking for Mary. Well, his beloved, he didn't know her name. So, I have episodes, where he was a gladiator, or the dudes were a gladiator, they're pirates and whatnot. And so I had this image of Dagon in Delphi. And Delphi was where Alexander the Great, who is also in my book, is Dagon's friend, though they never met. And he admires his warfare, how he conducted his life. And so before Alexander the Great went on his conquest to, for battle, he went to the shrine of Delphi to seek wisdom and whatnot from this oracle of Delphi, this mouthpiece of a goddess of God Apollo. And I don't know, it was like 5:30 in the morning, Rowena. So my husband was getting ready for work. Everything happened like 2012. I don't know what was with that year. And I wrote the story in about 15 minutes, and I just blasted it out. And there, and then when I wrote it, I'm like, ain't too bad. And then initially it wasn't even going to be put in the book. And then I thought, and it wouldn't have been in the book for a good reason. And Rowena made a good point. It had to have a point, right? It had to move the plot along, or else it's just I don't know, just a wacky story. So, and I really wanted it to be in there, and I didn't want to like make it contrived. I didn't want to just fit it in to make it fit in, and it just happened that did fit in. There's a lot of stories that didn't fit in. But book 2, he's going to be in Egypt. You're going to see him in Egypt.
I am hoping to be there in September.
What now, ma'am?
So-
I'm sorry.
I am hoping to be there in September. Hopefully, Rowena's coming with me there.
Oh,
We can only hope.
oh my
Well,
goodness.
you know, we can do as well, right?
Right,
Oh,
right.
man, I want to go. Yeah. So yeah. So that's. Mhm.
So there's something about focus and determination. And you, Diana, have shown me persistence.
Oh, for
You
goodness sake.
just-
You're so sweet. You're so sweet.
Yes, I mean, year after year, you were back with that story and you had improved
It
upon
had
it.
to be embarrassing too. I mean,
No, you are amazing
Oh,
in
you're
that,
so
in your
sweet.
perseverance of that. And I
Oh,
think that a
goodness.
lot of times it's just so easy to give up.
No,
it's so
it really
easy to-
is. I really saw myself. I made this connection. Now, it's, you know, if you were an athlete and if you're going to try to pursue any kind of protein, that doesn't mean you're going to get taken, you know, but you better be preparing yourself to be taken, to take that moment when you're called, when your number is up, to be
Yep.
used on that team and to have a spot on that team, even if it's just holding down the bench for a while, you know. And so I made that connection. I mean, I wouldn't say like a conscious decision of being an athlete, but once I kind of made that connection, I thought, you know what, I mean, they don't have any guarantees that all their hard work's going to profit them, but it's not going to profit them if they give up. That's for sure. So that's how I made that decision. And then you have to be teachable. If you're not teachable, then you just might as well quit.
So you're also a cyclist.
Yes, I am.
You, how many miles can you go?
Well, you know what? I hate to say that I actually had a heat stroke on the trail this week.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was really pretty bad. I mean, which is crazy. I've been biking for 4 years, which is pretty short length of time to be doing endurance. But there again, I was just like, bam, 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 you know, out the door. So this week, you know, it's been so cold in this state for such a long time, or at least in this part of the state. And then a couple days later was in the 90s. So I was out with the same amount of water that I would take during the winter, because we bike almost all year long if we can. And so I had this water, it's about a 32-ounce water, but it's not enough for the summertime. So I had that water, I had Gatorade, and we were probably about 40 miles out. And then we got about 4 miles from the car, and I started feeling like this cramp in my side. And I just ignored it. And then, you know, my vision started going bad, and it was bad news. So, but biking kind of came to me in a bizarre way. I was almost, actually, they thought I was going to be disabled from just years of teaching martial arts, judo, jiu-jitsu. I just wrecked up my ankles and wrists because just tons of wrist locks. And when you're training, you have to teach people. And of course, you're a student, you're a teacher, you're a student. And I mean, so just over the years, I developed extreme tendonitis in my ankles. They were very, very bad. I mean, I could barely walk. Years when I was writing, I'm so glad I was a writer because I didn't have to walk. It was so painful. And then I went to therapy, and it took a long time. And then finally, they put me on this bike, like a exercise bike. And they're like, look, this is no resistance. This is probably what you need to be doing at home. And then I took my younger daughter's bike out. I didn't have a bike or a trike, so I just took the bike out, and I could only do about a quarter of a mile. And then I went up, you know, I just kept, and then I did my first 30, got rid of that bike, got a lighter bike, did 75, and now I'm on a racer.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
You
And asthmatic. So now my ankles are built up. I don't have hardly any pain anymore. Very, very, very rare. It's minimal, very minimal, if I have it at all. and my pulmonary function is better.
For
And I have
sure.
a very low resting heart rate, which I never had
Wow.
before. So I'm just saying, so the persistence is, so I do have a tendency for suffering in a sense where endurance sports kind of lead to that. It's a bizarre kind of a world. And I think that's where the writing comes in. I'm like a persistent learner, maybe to a fault sometimes, I think. I don't probably drive crazy, asking all these questions. So, you know, that's a part of my personality. And, but I, you know, expensive sport too.
So you enjoy traveling. You've been how many places?
Oh my word. Asia, all over Europe, a lot of places in Asia, Australia. Oh man, I don't know. It's been a lot. It's been a
And
blessing.
this is travel just for
Well,
vacation or
a little bit of mostly vacation, but my mom was born and raised in Germany. As my dad said, he captured her.
he
And,
captured her.
Captured her. Fell in love with her and captured her. And so he, so they, you know, they were married for about 25 years until he passed away. And, but so I still have cousins over there. So we would go there to visit them, and we would stay almost all summer. And then there you go. The countries are so small. So your night trains, you'd be in Spain, or you would be in, you know, Switzerland, or you would be a day trip into Austria or something like that. So, but as a kid, I mean, it's just a part of what you do. You don't think of it as anything as a blessing, but looking back, are you kidding me? And so, yeah, you know, but now we go to France every other year, and it's a hard life, people. Traveling, not teasing. It's a blessing. No, it's a blessing.
So you learn on the spot. Like, I think travel is one of the best ways to learn about the world, especially
No, it
for
is.
Yeah,
It is.
especially
I
for
mean,
kids. Instead of just reading it, I never paid attention to history. I never thought I would be in America, but then now that I'm here, I go like, whoa, I'm seeing it with my very own eyes. And
yeah.
well, Rowena loves to travel too, and that's how she learned growing
I
up.
want to go to be with France one day.
Yes, we're going to Japan, we're going to France, we're going to Greece, we're going to all sorts of places,
Yeah,
Diane.
Japan. Oh, I mean, I don't know. Japan's gorgeous. It's a beautiful country too. We got plenty of places to stay in those countries, people.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but it does give you you know, all of us have worldviews, right? You know, and it really hones into the fact that when I was spent time in Kenya and around believers, and they believe in God, but their traditional expressions are different in the US, and it's not a bad thing. It's a thing. It's the way they, you know, and they're born again believers. And so you really kind of strips away, they're beautiful people, you know.
You
And
appreciate.
so, yeah, oh yeah, and I appreciate our country a lot. And you know, then you kind of start seeing some issues. You're like, yeah, you know, maybe this parts of Africa, or like maybe they got it going on more than we do. And then there's other countries, whatnot. But it gives you, I don't know, it just gives you like you said, Amber, it's like, you know, history 101, or
Yeah.
being with people one-on-one, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. A broader perspective, because you're not
Yeah.
only in your own shell, you're seeing how it is there.
Right.
And then you
Right.
like acclimate yourself or immerse yourself in the environment.
Right.
You.
Right. 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 And that's totally different. I mean, in a lot of those countries, I couldn't speak the language. I mean, Japan, I mean, doesn't have any English in the areas. There's no signs, so God knows what you do. And so, you know, so there again, I became really good at sign language, or you know, miming. And in every country I've ever been to, the first word that I learn is I need help. Every country I've ever been to, I need help. And so, and I've had to use that because I've had SWAT teams come down when I was in a bathroom in Japan. I'm like,
What do you mean? Tell us about that. What do you mean? Image in my head.
Another book I'm going to write is Toilet Humor from Abroad. So I could not, I was in Osaka, it was in a mall, and my friend that I was visiting, well, she's an American, she was over there, she was teaching English, okay, in this school. And so we were in the mall, and I had to use the bathroom. So she showed me where it was. I could not find the flusher. And to say I'm looking around, I mean, because I have been in so many, I mean, I've been in holes, no kidding, no pun, the Eastern toilets, Western toilets, looking for a string, looking for something on the back, looking on the wall. There was nothing under this, nothing. There was a red knob on the wall. And I went, okay, red means stop, right? So I thought, okay, I can't do that, but I couldn't find it. So I'm like, well, maybe over here, red means go. So I pushed it, and
Oh.
and here came these guys speaking Japanese, and I'm like in the toilet, and my friend comes in. She's like, "What did you do?" I'm like, "I pushed the flusher. That's not a flusher." And then, so they had the guns and everything. And I'm like, oh my goodness, golly. And so she's like, so she showed me, Diana, it was, you know where it was? Way under the seat, down below by the tank. Who in their right mind would look under the tank? So there's going to be a book called Toilet Humor.
And now you know.
Near, there, and far. Oh,
Wow.
No, seriously, Rowena, wouldn't that be a fun travel addendum to your next
Like
trip?
for the next flush.
Oh,
Yeah, you
I
could-
mean, it's
uh,
You could write in your memoirs all your experiences.
I
well,
know.
toilets
You know,
especially.
Diane, you still owe me that visit. We get together, right? We're all here in Illinois.
We all have to do that.
Come on.
We all
Remember,
have to do
you told
that.
us the first time I met you. But when I first met
So
you,
sweet.
you know, with Ro, your stories, it's amazing. Everyone has a story.
Yes,
and
they do.
I'm amazed with how you have used those stories. And like, it was like your springboard for where
Yes.
you are now. Because everyone has stories and stories of ups, downs, you know, win, success, and defeat. But
Right.
there's always that redemption part. And would
That's it.
you expound on, like, you know, how do you turn that story for the better? Is that like not only the people that are around you, or most of it came from you, like the decision to change it?
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
So, like, what did you like in turning the story around for the better? Because you being in the place that you were, it
Right.
felt like that was it, right?
No, it was, yeah.
Yeah, but how did you
Boom.
like redeem yourself out of that story?
Well,
Is it the people around you, or is it combination?
it's definitely a combination. I had to have these, like you said, you know, the princes and the ladies in waiting, and these the angels that honestly, Rowena, you're an angel too, because you know you have to have a start somewhere. And so you need people to kind of point you in the direction. And then of course, you know, the Lord saved my soul, which is that if that was the end, that's the beginning right there. Even if you did nothing else, I would rather been homeless and have that than not have it and live in a mansion. So because I think we, well, I know we already all have a mansion one day, right? So you know, we don't, you know, why do I need one down here? And but then I knew that there was something in me that just wasn't a quitter. You know, I've somehow the Lord's blessed me with optimism, even in the most bleakest times. Now, I mean, when I was bleak, it was bleak, but there was something in me that that I didn't know at that time was the Lord, sustaining me in those deep, darkest hours. And then I just, and honestly, to be quite frankly, after I got help from my own issues with depression, I started seeing a little bit more clearly through the murk. And you know, it's one thing to have people help you, which you need that, but you also have to dig in somehow and find a way, a will. And one of my favorite lines in my book, one of my favorite lines is, "A man with a will is harder to kill."
Oh, wow. Let me write that down.
That should be a t-shirt, because that's when I wrote
Wait,
that.
can I quote you on that? I will eventually have a t-shirt business.
Yes. That is a huge thing.
Man with a will
Is harder to kill. A man with a
That's
will is
harder.
harder to kill. And I actually determined that was kind of me too. I had this will, though it wasn't always like, I didn't always feel like it. Excuse me, sorry. But I mean, I had this deep desire to succeed, whether it was in my education,
awesome.
whether it was being a mother and a writer, or a friend, and so yeah, I wasn't going to go out with a fight. I mean, I was going to go out with a fight. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to lay
Yeah.
down.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. And you made good use of your time. You were always busy with something and getting yourself into a better version of yourself.
Well, there were times, especially before I got help with mental illness. I mean, I was in my house a lot, quite frankly. I had a hard time getting out of my house. There lies the other grip of getting help, whether it doesn't always mean you have to have medicine, but I'm just saying, to reach out to people, to accept the fact that, it's okay to not be okay. So once I started getting help, like legitimate help, a phenomenal, wonderful doctor who gave me help, I started seeing clearly through, and I don't want to call it normalized thinking, because what does normal really mean? But just, typical, if that's the word to say, Rowena, functioning, where I could talk to you and receive counseling or receive help. Because at that time, I really had a hard time doing it. I didn't know I had all this going on. But once I kind of got that in the handle, then I was able to make a more of a conscious, which is amazing that God saved me, how he got into my soul when I was clearly, it was murky, that is amazing.
So at some point you were a passive observer of your life.
Oh, yeah.
And that you were just letting life happen to you.
Oh,
When
yeah.
did you make that decision to do something about your life?
Probably, honestly, so, and I'm not talking about being married or my children, okay, as just me as an individual. Probably, and I don't know. I mean, obviously, when I got saved, but there's and with good therapy, and honestly, probably when that story came to me, when God reminded me of what, as if I needed reminding what happened, but there was a decision, and I remember with Mary, I was very, very clear that the Lord wanted me to write about what happened to me as a child, and I fought it tooth and nail, because who wants to go down that road? What a gravel pit that is. But I knew then, and my husband's like, Diane, I don't want you to dredge up old memories. And I said, I know I've been healed, and I know God would never do this to, see what you went through. So then I was submitted to the pen, and I decided, okay, right then and there. And at that moment, or not at that moment, but in increments, I knew then I had a voice. I don't know who was going to read it, or if anybody was going to ever read it, but the point of it is I felt like I knew I had a voice at that time, that and I think once I knew I had a voice, then I was off. And so I think that story really became a really good impetus of, okay, now's the time to just do it, and that's enough.
So you realized you had a voice.
Yes.
And you decided to write down what was going on with you. And it's almost therapeutic to be able to write some stuff down and just.
Yeah, even if it was only for me.
Yeah. An audience of one, but you've inspired so many people through your work.
Oh, goodness, that's a blessing. That's a blessing.
And more. Yep, and more.
No, that's a blessing to me, because right here I sat looking out this window, and I really had this thought. I probably knew you then, Rowena. It was really early on. And I thought, who's going to want to read this book? I really did. I mean, I thought that. And it wasn't because who's going to read this book. It was because I had very low self-esteem, that I was like, who's going to want to read this book? You know? So God was pruning that too. I mean, I don't want to lose. I don't want to not have low self-esteem, but I don't want to have the opposite where I'm so prideful. Nothing bothers me. I don't ever want to be like that too. But I don't want to be like, woe is me, and I'm such a terrible person. I think there has to be a combination of not haughty pride or pride in general. But do you know what I'm saying? There has to be a good medium where you're not like, woe is me, or look at me, I can't do anything wrong. Because there was an author, I don't know, you don't know Rowena, but we were talking about that, and we were talking about being teachable. And I told her, we were just being frank, and I told her, I said, look, if everything you write is golden, then nothing is. I said, you have to be able to have people, what I call a hatchet. Sometimes you need to have a hatchet. Edgar Allan Poe was known as the hatchet editor. He was pretty bad. So, sometimes you need to, maybe tickle their ears, but sometimes you just need to be blunt. And I'm glad, Rowena, that you've been like that to me, because that's really how you learn. And I know, and the other thing I told people is you have to know your editor, you have to know your publishing house, and where do they want. And I think it was you or Megan that said, we want your version to be the best vision of your version. And that you guys said to me very early on, and it set a tone that I became even probably, hopefully, a little bit more teachable. But like, yeah, look, you know what? No, come on.
Yeah, stories are like diamonds. You get a rock and it's unrefined, and it's a matter of chipping away to reveal the diamond inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you did chip away.
No, I chipped away 280,000 words initially, down to what, 75, 70, whatever it is. Oh, that's so embarrassing to think.
But then you can make it into book 2. You can divide your
Which I did.
270,000 words. Yes. So it doesn't have to end with just cutting it down. Then you can build it back up.
But it was just like, I remember, I don't know if it was you, I sat down with somebody, they saw my word count. I didn't even know about a word count except out of academia. And I went, it has to be what? But anyway, you can always cut it down. Oh, chop away at your prize, at your manuscript.
So then you're writing book 2.
I am writing book 2.
Are you happening with that? How are you with that?
How's that going? That one is really going well. I gave you a little bit of the chapters, and which I'm very glad I did, to get that out of the way. But this one is going to be another, I think, one of my favorite ones in a lot of ways, because Dagan is being more of himself. He's dressing the way I always saw him. And there again, it totally wound up being like Kurt, who would know. But I think, I know with him in general, but I mean, I think it was just the scene of the grunge era. So, he had he's more like the holes and the sneakers and the concert t-shirts. And he, in book 1, he's dressed in like these suits, which is not really him, but he doesn't know, he wants to put his best foot forward with Mary, because he doesn't have a lot of self-esteem, but he wants to set the right tone. And eventually even the dudes are like, be a man, take a chance. I think she likes you, don't know why. And so he becomes his real self. He's stepping out on a limb and saying, okay, here it is, this is me. And yeah, so I'm really enjoying that. And I'm enjoying I hate to say that, getting one of her abusers. I'm enjoying that. I think you got that. I don't know if you read that yet.
Yes. I'm just you brought up an interesting point about the dudes. Who are the dudes in your book?
Oh my goodness, those guys. Well, remember they used to be the selves.
So they were like aspects. They were aspects
of Dagan,
but they're now his posse.
Thanks to Rowena, it wound up. In fact, Darian told me, Mom, and this is verbatim. She said, "Mom, if Rowena didn't tell you to do that, it would have been so confusing. And now they have personalities. I am so glad that you told me to get rid of the selves. Oh my goodness, that was, that was so great. So, and I mean, Darian just laughed. How could that be? Why did you write that? I'm like, look, I didn't know any better, okay? And so those dudes are Raz, Sledge, Fryer, and Mr. Cool. Initially, I saw them as the Rat Pack, what's his name? Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., and whoever was in the posse. And they're just, how would you describe them? Well, greedy, conniving. They'd probably do, I don't know. They're just.
But they're his best friends.
They're his best friends. Yes.
They're his best friends. They got his back. They're his team.
Oh my goodness! And you know how funny
team
they
of
are.
Misfits.
Aren't they? Aren't they funny?
Yes, they bring the comic relief to your book, to your story.
And that, I think, wound up being a blessing, because there's some stuff that's pretty gritty in that book.
Right.
And then of course, McGethna, I think she needed to be in the picture because she kind of adds that other flavor. And then the dudes are just who they are. I mean, they're just, and in fact, I had a reader that just read my book, and she said, Raz is my favorite one. She said, is he real? I'm like, no, and I'm like,
yes, he is. Like, he's real.
He's real. I'm like, well, is he hooked up? I'm like,
he's real to me.
Well, in book 2, he does have a girlfriend named Candy.
Oh. A sneak peek.
Yeah. You have to read it?
Yeah, yes.
Book 1 first.
Oh my goodness, he's a trip. So yeah, I'm enjoying that. But now on a serious note, when I wrote the scene where those abusers get, initially I wrote them, they have no name because they don't deserve a name. Mm-hmm. So that was a little bit of me getting back into what happened, and I don't know. So that's kind of what I laid in them. They don't deserve a name. I don't know if that sounds harsh, but
well, no, I mean, it's something where you have to come full circle and face what's happened, and then realize that there are people out there who, are hard to forgive.
Yeah, that's true.
Because of what they've done, and they're not repentant.
No, right.
So
no, right, exactly. That's true.
And they do these awful things to other people, and they're not sorry.
No,
there's nothing there.
Right.
And so how do you get beyond that? How do you overcome that?
Well, I don't know if it was the girls or no, it wasn't the girls, because they didn't know about what happened to me until we talked about that. And I think it was one of my early readers, like really early readers. And they asked me why did they give these guys names. I'm like, would you? And they're like, no. So yeah. And honestly, they never came to me, but I think they weren't supposed to come to me. The way I look at it. So that book has a lot of really good things coming up. Of course, there's another bad character in there. He's really nasty.
So your book really runs the gamut of emotions. I mean, it made me laugh. It made me cry.
I know. I sat and cried. I had a friend that told me she cried, and then I had another friend that told me she was laughing her butt off. And then, excuse me if I could say that. And then, and then one person said they couldn't read it until like broad daylight. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
One sitting.
You mean it was scary?
Yeah. In fact, one person said, I think I created a person worse than Darth Vader. He said, I think you're going to give him a run for his money. I mean, come on, Sevilla's pretty nasty.
She is.
I know. And that was hard to write, honestly, because they're not real, but they take on a realness where you have to write in 3-dimensional. So they become I don't want to say channeling, that just sounds so bad, but I mean, like, you're almost like a method actor. I hate to say it, so I had to give her airtime like I gave David. That was an emotional load right there. That was, oof. Now I don't mind writing her, but at that time it was really hard.
See, the depth of your villains shows also the depth of your book, because
Yeah, they're pretty bad.
there's always got to, whenever you have a villain, there's always got to be, they always have to be deeper than just being evil. What is
Yes,
their
right.
why? Why are
Right,
they the
right.
way they are? What is the reason why they act and behave like they do?
Yeah. In fact, in book 2, I think it's going to be in book 2 where, Mary asked Dakin, if this isn't a spoiler. I mean, I know but this is a lot of spoilers, but why is Sevilla like this with you? And he said, well, how would you feel if your parents told you that you wish you were never born? That's the what it is. She wishes he was never created, because he has a title and all. So there's the deeper issue with her is
It's a complicated relationship
it is a
between
complicated
the
relationship.
between Sevilla and between Dakin.
Very complicated.
What is she to him? Is she his boss, his tormentor? He's
A
everything.
little bit of both. Yeah. A
Yes.
little bit of all of it. Yeah.
And then this oppression that he feels, and this feeling of not being able to freely express what he wants to
Right.
do.
Right. Right. Exactly. And he has to hide everything because he doesn't know who's listening.
And
so
were there
it's,
aspects in your own life where the situation, and you were able to write it in a very real way?
yeah. This was probably the first time. I mean, I had a hard time. Of course, some of this is easy to talk about. I mean, so I was able to flesh it out through my characters, and it wound up being very, very, I don't know, very cathartic, where I could be honest with myself of kind of what happened. But the Lord was so merciful because I don't have the guilt and baggage that I had back in the day. That's one thing that's been freed. I can remember it, but only because it's to help people or help myself and help people. It's not to make me feel like Satan wanted me to feel, I don't have that baggage anymore. That's the beautiful thing. There is where the grace comes in right there. Because you have to be able to remember it to be able to help somebody. I mean, how can you help somebody if you're like, okay, that happened to me, but I don't. Now, unless you really do have amnesia, but there are parts that happen that I do have amnesia from. That's legit. But I have enough to be able to relate it. But it better, it has to be laced with hope, or there's no point in writing it.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't need that kind of. I don't want that. I don't want to be that kind of writer. I never will be.
How did you come up with the title? What's the story behind it?
I knew someone would ask me that. Oh my goodness. I just thought about this 5 days ago. I'm like, I know this is going to be the title that I originally had, and I don't even know if I'm going to say it. It's just so bad. And my husband, in this very room, everything almost happened in this room. He said, "Oh, I don't like that title." He's like, this is the title I had before. And he's like, "Oh, I don't think that's good." He said, and I went, "Well, I don't know. You don't even read." He's like, and so I'm laying and putting Darian to bed, my youngest child. She would have been 7 at the time. And I don't know what it was. I started thinking about, the story never leaves my head. So I was thinking of something. And then it dawned on me that Dagon, of course, was a fallen angel. And the abyss is mentioned in the Bible, though that didn't register in my head. And I thought, abyss of the fallen. And I'm laying there, Darian's laying, trying to sleep. And I went, I got a title. What is it? Abyss of the fallen. Okay, that's good. And that's it. But the title before that was trust me, Rowena, if you would have liked my story, you would have ditched it just on that title. Go home.
Don't judge the book by its cover, literally.
Oh man, there's so many things like that I'm so glad I listened to my family. Sometimes they're better aware than you are. I mean, me as a writer, not you personally, me. And
so there was healing for you in writing this book. It was therapeutic.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. definitely. Who would have knew, right?
And how long did it take you? Like just
Oh my
like
goodness.
every day for, did you write it every day
It
or?
took, oh yeah. Well, there were days I didn't, with the ADHD, it's hard to kind of do some of these things, but it took 3 years to create Dagan, at least. He was very, very complicated because he was so private. He, like, if you saw, if he was really here, he would be like, look, I was interviewing her. I don't want to give her my story. I don't know if I can even trust her. So he would just be giving me little informations. My name's Dagan. Well, I need more than that. Okay, my name is Dagan. Don't worry about the last name. I don't have a last name. This is kind of what it is. So he was interviewing me. He was trying to suss me out to see if I was even trustworthy enough to tackle his story, and if I'd be freaked out enough to tackle his story. So he was very, very private, because I thought about that. How many people are going to talk about, even if you have mental illness? Oh, by the way, I have this, I have depression, I have ADHD, I self-harm. No one's going to do that, right? So you keep a lot of things in my childhood I've bottled up for so many years that we never would have had this conversation, because I never would have talked about it. So that's one aspect. And then just and then once I got to know the character, it's no wonder he was very, very private, because he loves Mary. He has to keep everything in his head so private that why would he be telling everybody about what happened? Now Mary was a lot easier to write. It just came out like that.
Well, Mary is you, really.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So that
Yeah.
made her easy to write.
That
You were the one.
she was too easy, and he was just too go figure, huh? Difficult. No, he's a lovely character though.
So what would you say is the moment where you realized that you were going to uh, create this book?
Probably it was definitely in 2010. And once I had what I thought was a plot, no, I don't even think it was that. I think there was a point when I recognized that I wanted to find out where you were, where were you, this. And then once I figured that out, and then I thought, okay, now let's go on this ride. Let's really figure out what's going on. And there was a lot of tears. Hate to say it. There was a lot of tears. There was a lot of laughter. It's so bizarre laughing to yourself in this room and no one's in here. It just sounds wacky. And but yeah, once I started figuring him out, I was kind of off on that. And then of course the research and just Alexander the Great and all that just fueled everything. And I was really off.
So what would you say is your pivotal moment of when you realize, I think I can do this. I think I can actually write about this and be able to get rid of this pain and write about that.
Well, I think when the Lord was revealing to me about writing this, when he was showing me about Mary, when I kind of was submissive to the pen and just been like, okay, if God's told me to do this, I know it's in good hands. And so then I became like, all right, let's just do this thing. And, I've never looked back. Well, I've looked back, but I didn't stop. Let's just say,
That's great.
That word count alone would have set anybody back. Oh man, oh goodness.
So you're actually the epitome of creating your own future. You decided that you're writing your own story. Basically, and you're deciding, I'm not going to let things just happen to me. I have to take hold of my life and take control.
No, yes, because no one's going to do it. I'm not saying that, but eventually you have to make the steps, right? You can only and honestly, there's a lot of people that was holding me up in this process. They don't dump you, but you still have to, the words aren't going to write themselves, So, but and not just that, even on the bike and, I also had to learn how to be a mom and a wife as I was writing, and then a mom and a a wife and a mother and a writer and a biker. You know, I had there's it's still kind of and then a friend, and then you know serving in the church, or you know being in Bible studies, which I really do desperately need. And so you know it there is where right to publish. I'm going to clue. I mean that was a those classes are phenomenal to help you learn how to manage your time,
Mhm.
or at least have a purpose with your time. I mean, trust me, I've done a lot of time wasting. I can waste time. Okay, so I'm not I'm not sitting here going that. I mean, trust me, I can waste time, but I have to. You know, that's a conscious decision that I have to do. I think a lot of it maybe has to do with ADHD. I get bored real quick. You know, and my mind just kind of drifts and wanders. Um,
How
most
did
So
you
many
cope with
ideas.
that? How do you cope with that? How do
oh
you cope with your ADHD?
well, that's still a challenge. I mean, I'm on medicine for it. I could kiss my pharmacist for creating whoever created those lovely medicines, those angels of mercy. And but I have like timers. I am like on my you know I have like um, uh, calendars that I try to be diligent about doing, or a timer set to you know to to do whatever. And
Right.
honestly, it comes down to willingness. I have to be willing. I mean, like, you know, there are things that I don't want to do. I don't always want to do laundry. I mean, I don't really ever want to do laundry, but it has to get done. And my daughter's in nursing school right now, and I know what that's like. And so, you know, Darian's been helping as much as she can. And of course, my husband, he's the breadwinner, and he doesn't need to be doing that. So, so, you know, I, and honestly, let me just say this, my youngest daughter has taught me a lot. She's helped me become my true self. And I mean, Kurt Cobain to a certain degree, but more personally and tangible. My both, actually, both my daughters. I don't want to. Both of them have showed me that. But Darian being in the rehab and going to these family meetings and these sessions and learning, I was also learning about myself. I didn't go in there with myself, and I didn't drag that onto her, but I was listening. And then I thought, wait a minute, I should apply willingness too. It doesn't always work for me, but it does work most of the time, because I just have to be like, look, you know what's going to happen if I just sit here, nothing. You know, the laundry is still going to pile up. That doesn't change. I don't have a house elf.
Oh, we all need one of
I don't
those.
mean I yes, I need a Dobby or a whoever Debbie. And so
Debbie.
whoever it is, you know. But I don't have one of those, and my kids are not a house elf, and never will be. So you know, but they do help out now. Darian's been really good. Ashley's been really good. And if I could even say their name, I probably shouldn't have been saying their name this whole time. So
Yeah, we are all part of who the people around us are, and
yeah,
we all have to have that support system, uh, that level of help and companionship, and
yeah,
what are we doing all this for?
right,
So
yeah,
I think it's just important that we're not all by ourselves, and that if you're alone, don't be alone. Try to find
right.
somebody to help you. Try to find somebody you can help.
And there's the crux, isn't it? Because when you have these issues, like you feel like you're the only one. It's very draining. You
Mhm.
know, you want to sleep or just bury yourself in there, and it can be difficult for people to
Preaching.
open up to people. But you know, that's the hope, is that people, you know, say, you know, it's okay, I'm not okay. You know,
Mhm.
you know,
So in
and
writing this
it
book,
helps.
this also helped you to have a reason to climb out of any kind of depression or kind
Oh
of
yeah.
despair,
Oh
to
my
get up out
goodness.
of bed
Yeah.
every morning.
And if
Mhm.
anything, Dagan's like, you think you got it bad? Come on, baby, get a grip. Look at me, you know. So it's funny. So yeah, I mean, it's been God has been very, very kind to bring this story, and you know, if anything, to assure me that, of course, I do have a voice. If you know, I mean, if I didn't need the book to know that I had a voice, but I guess I kind of did. And so, you
Mhm.
know, it's still amazing. It still tickles me that, you know, I mean, literally, Rowena, I have stores in Seattle, Syracuse, um, where else? Martha's Vineyard, of all places, that are waiting for my book to come in. So, you know, that's a really good problem to have, if it is a problem at all. And I just think that's hilariously cute to think that, I sat here going, who's going to want to read my book? And now these stores want to carry it,
They're calling you.
Yeah, literally. So in fact, we're going to be leaving this Friday to San Francisco and Seattle. Of course, I'm going to go, visit some of the grunge scenes and, Kurt Cobain's house and whatnot. So there'll be just get ready for some pictures coming through. But I also am going to visit one of the bookstores. It's a really famous bookstore in Seattle that I'll be visiting them. I mean, they know me, but they never seen me in person. So
I'm going there too. I think I'll see you.
where are you going?
I'm going to a writers' conference out in Seattle.
When?
This weekend.
Are you driving or flying?
Flying.
Well, we're gonna be in San Francisco Fridays. I think we fly. How long are you going to be out there?
Just until Monday.
Monday, what time?
Maybe 4 or 5 o'clock.
Then we could maybe see you in Seattle.
Yeah.
Awesome. They're both in Illinois and they're going to see each other in Seattle.
Yeah, didn't even plan it, right?
No. Oh. Yes. Wait a minute. We fly in there Sunday.
Oh, you do? Okay. You find it. Okay. We'll work it out.
Sorry.
Dinner.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yes.
Because I think you manifest these things, Diana. You are one of those people that just have that kind of energy to create something, to create a path.
Oh my goodness, isn't that is, oh my goodness. Okay, what conference is that? I mean,
it's the Renewal Conference, Northwest Christian Writers.
Oh my goodness, and I didn't know about that. Oh, anyway.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. You can look it up. Maybe
So you know.
Bring my books.
I wish I could lug all that.
I know, no, you can't. There's no way but there. Anyway, sorry. Yes.
Diana, I'd like to thank you because, as you were speaking earlier, I'm catching on when you, in the process of growing, in your story, you said there's a part there that says you get ready to be called upon. Maybe the time is not yet. But every day you're preparing yourself, and that's a really good trait to have in creating your own future. It's like you're not called yet right away, but you got to get ready.
No, you're right. You have to be ready. Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll be in a biking competition. I planned on doing something like that. You never know. So I'm like, okay, I'd be ready. But that's who knows what. But yes, you have to plan to succeed. And be, content, however that happens. And, and I kind of set a big goal for myself, but I also set attainable goals, writing writing 2 chapters. And
that's right. Yeah.
And maybe it's just to simply have a sense of purpose, a sense of something that you have to do, or to help somebody else. Something that will motivate you to make something different or have a different path in your life.
Right. And that's for everybody, isn't it?
Oh yeah. In every aspect, actually. In every aspect.
I love this. I'm so in love with this. Don't Be a Cinderella. This has to be a little book. I should write little. This is such a wonderful platform, because this is really in line with my belief of bringing hope and being, this is just a beautiful platform.
The other day, she was just playing ideas with me about, connecting. This is a wonderful platform, and later on we're gonna kind of like meet and then brainstorm, because it's educating. I love how you educated yourself or sought out truth. Yeah. Researching, because that's the only way that you can drive out fear in your life. And that's the only way where you can make better decisions on how you're going to chart your future or create your own.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if I mentioned this quote to you, Emperor, but I mean, if I haven't, I don't want to be like the broken, like a
Oh, I
dog.
love to be reminded.
But one of the first thing I wrote before I wrote anything was, in my scars I am free, free to remember, but no more a prisoner to it.
You know
And I
what?
wrote that down.
Wow.
What now? What now?
What? Can you say it again? And your?
In my scars I am free, free to remember, but no more a prisoner to it. That's the very first thing I wrote, and little did I know that then the Lord wanted me to write about what happened to me. And so that I actually put that on my dresser. That could be a shirt or a God knows what it could be. Maybe like well, actually, if I am able to hook up with somebody with mental illness, that would be a nice thing to get, like a bracelet or something like that. Because I mean, there's something to, you can remember it, but you don't want to be burdened with. You don't want to be in bondage to it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the freedom.
In my scars, I am free. That's
Free to-
amazing.
Free to remember, but no more.
Free to remember, but
But
longer a prisoner.
No longer a prisoner. Yeah. And today, what I heard. Yeah. Today, what I heard is, by his stripes, I am healed.
Oh yes.
So you heard it?
Oh yes.
Love
A new
it.
creation, a new creature, a new creation. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, come on. I mean, you know what? Like I said, I mean, if even if I never was an published author or or however God have allotted my time, I mean, when I got saved, that was the end game. That was the beginning of my life, and that was good enough. You know what I mean? I would have been content living back in my car if I had that. I mean, I didn't want to live in my car, but I mean, if I knew I had that and I had my car, then that would have been. I wouldn't want to stay in the car. I probably still would have had gumption to get out of it, but I mean, I still was very, very then wealthy in spirit, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's awesome. Bless those people that got you out of it, like physically open the car
Oh
door
my
for
goodness, yeah. You know what? And yeah, my daughters were able to meet him. I think it was in 2014. They met them and they're like, yes, we knocked on the glass and they told the story and she had apple cores in the seat. And I'm like, yeah, it's all I could eat.
Wow.
I hated apples for many years. Touched a single apple.
Wow.
I could eat them now, but apple pie, apple anything, I hated it. No.
No, thank those people who saved your life, who got you out of there and changed your path.
And brought me to church.
Yes.
On a Wednesday.
Because there's church on Wednesday.
Jesus is only on Wednesday. I'm only on Sunday, and that's funny to think about.
Yeah. And I believe, God sends people in your life in, ways you never expect.
Oh, no.
And it could be at an instant.
Well, it is. It really is. I mean, God's timing is perfect timing. So even Rowena, whatever happens with the situation that we're working on, I mean, it's all in God's hands. I mean, honestly, right?
Sure.
His timing is perfect. In fact, the lady at one of the distributors that I spoke to, she said, this is an issue that a lot of people are going through right now. And she said, what if what you're doing is going to help other authors? I'm like, really? She went, yes. I'm like, well, okay then. Okay. And Darian was
just in a test of patience.
Yes. Yeah. And Darian was with me and she was so good. She said, Mom, they like your book. Yeah. And they're like, she said, what's going to happen. I'm like, yeah. And so, but she was so sweet and, it is what it is.
I see you have a ring on. Is that the onyx ring that?
Oh, this one?
It's like what Dagan has.
This is a really unique story. I don't know how much time we have. We probably don't have too much time, but this was not my original engagement ring. My original engagement ring was like Princess Diana's.
Oh, okay.
Now, when I was 16, my parents had a black onyx with diamonds around it. Black onyx was my dad's favorite stone. Oh. I had to pawn that in California in order to eat. So I didn't have it anymore. But so the black onyx I gave the Dagan one was in honor of my dad. And so, yeah, I had to pawn it. And I mean, it is what it is. And so when I got married and then I lost that ring, so then This one I found at an antique, and it was, to me, it was almost like the locusts were being redeemed, were being cleared out of my life, and I felt like my dad,
Wow.
piece of my dad was back, and it was bizarre, and it's like, this is like from like the 1800s. Who would have known? And I took it to a jeweler. I didn't even know if the stones were real. He's like, "Oh yeah, they're real, and they're like these. This is a Victorian setting with old mine diamonds." I'm like,
Whoa.
so I felt like I was in like that.
Whoa.
What was that show? Like the Antique Roadshow?
Yeah.
I thought it was all fake. I mean, it was gold, so I figured, well, that's okay. I'll just get it sized. It doesn't have to be real. And the guy's like, no, this is really real, like expensively real. I'm like, okay, so I got it sized. And so I think it was like, I mean, my original engagement ring was beautiful, but I think that my dad needed to come back. So this is like my dad, except the diamonds are a little bit different. These are really old diamonds. But isn't that bizarre?
Yeah, it's a good thing that you found it.
Yeah.
No, it was like, I thought it was fake. I really did. He's like, oh no, these are really real. Like Civil War real. I'm like, okay.
Whoa.
Yeah, they're really good jewelers. Like
Awesome.
Henry. I found a Henry Bennett. In my book, he's a jeweler.
Ah.
There you go. There you go.
In fact, when I left him, I said, "Bye, Henry. Bye, Mr. Bennett." And he's like, when I told him, he's like, "Okay, I'll be your Mr. Bennett."
You're a character in my book, didn't you know?
I know that. He just laughed. He's so sweet.
Even before I met you, I knew.
Yeah. Who knew? But it's a beautiful thing. Thank you for noticing.
Well, I wanted to thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh my goodness, it's a blessing to me.
Show us, do you have a copy of your book that you can hold up?
Yeah.
Yes. Hang on now, as I do the mysterious. Now, because my husband is a CPA, and he counts for everything. So right under his desk, I'm not kidding, it's right under my desk.
Wow.
And he has everything listed of who bought what and where and how. And here it is.
Abyss of the Fallen.
Yes,
by
it
Diana
is.
Estell.
Wow.
Yes,
Yes.
isn't that, and
Wow.
literally he
It's
has the whole shebang of who bought what, when, where, and he's well, God bless him. I need that. Like
That's
who,
your,
what, when, where, how.
That's your Lifetime Achievement Award. Right
awesome.
there.
Honestly, right?
To see that into print and
From a car to this, from a broken life to this,
Yeah.
from a person who thought they were dead to this, a person
Beautiful story.
who had no future to that. And now, of course, my daughters and everything are infused into that. They're all a part of that. But I mean, yeah, I was left to die in so many ways. And then, I mean, that's amazing.
That's a beautiful story.
Thinking about that just makes me want to cry, because that's just so wild to think about. Oh,
yes, you've had such a journey, Diana. I just admire you and your perseverance and your strength and your determination to
actually
change your life.
Yeah, the show title, "Don't Be Cinderella," is so apt to your life.
It is.
You took your life, in your own. Well, of course, you took a different direction,
right?
Based on what was. Yeah.
But what I'm really glad is I'm not going to be a victim anymore. But my heart has been tender, because before I wasn't going to be a victim, but I was very callous about it. You know what I mean? I had a chip on my shoulder, and you would better not do that. Now, that's why I'm glad I didn't teach martial arts with that mindset, so I'm glad that I got saved. And, of course, when I met my husband, he was in college and I was taking Taekwondo. So he was I used to do all kinds of stuff on that, like that. Oh yeah. And so, so he, on one of our first dates, he was like, I don't think I need to protect her. She's kidding me. So anyway, but I'm really glad that I'm really glad that God softened, healed that portion of bitterness and fear and anger.
Yeah.
Because that's not a good gig.
Mhm.
you know. Yeah.
Mhm.
So what are your plans now? You finished book 2? You're going to make a
Well,
movie? What are we going to do?
I'm almost done with book 2. So you edit the chapters so I know I'm on the right mark. I know you're busy, don't get me wrong. And I got probably about 10 more to deliver, which I'm working on that to meet the deadline. And then yes, music to get done, a movie. Um,
Oh, because you're also a songwriter. You're also a
yes,
poet. So tell us
Yeah.
about that.
who knew, right? Who knew? Well, I think that's just kind of most of the poetry that you're referring to, Rowena, that came from writing a poem about where I was, who I am, who I thought I was, who I am, who I now believe I am or know I am, and the future that I never had to the future I have. And so because I'm actually part of a writers group called Write on Joliet. It's a beautiful writers group. And when I read that, I mean, it was like a hush. And this sort of like, that is the one of the best things you've ever brought in here. They said you're a good writer with that thing. And so there's like a lady who's a journalist, and she called me the next day. She said, I'm telling you, that thing's phenomenal. You could sell that. I said, if I get your permission, I want to frame it. So I think that just, came down to brutal honesty. Again, a very cathartic thing, but, but it wound up being I think a lot of my poetry is like that. Some of it's silly, but a lot of it is, well, there's some silly stuff me and Darian was singing, boogity boogity boo. We evolve all kinds of crazy stuff. But oh, that's hilarious. But yeah, those things just kind of come out. Not often, but when they do, they're impactful, at least to me, and occasionally other people.
So you'll be able to write the soundtrack to the movie.
I will be able to hopefully write the soundtrack. I can't play an instrument. We need to find somebody that looks like Dagan. He's 6'5" on a good day.
6'5".
6'5". He's 6'5".
Very tall.
I have a nephew that's 6'5", and when I look at him, and his wife is about my height, I'm like, okay, that's really what Dagan looks like. I'm like, dude, you're high. He's like, you're tall. High. That sounds bad. You're high. You're tall. And he's like, yeah, you're down there. I'm like, so yeah, we need to find somebody that could play Dagan. Well, all of them really. But I have a lot of friends that want to be in it.
Oh, you mean in the
I do. Yeah, I'll be a Shadow King. I'm good. I think I'm a good person. I wouldn't mind being bad. It's just funny. So yeah, Rowena, that'd be fun to do. Maybe we could write a screenplay with it one day.
Oh,
wow.
I think that's a very big possibility.
Yeah.
All right, I'll be a runner.
Oh, you guys hopefully will be on the red carpet one day.
There you go. There you go. Big dreams. We're going to create that future.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Well, yeah. You gotta actually have a vision board about it, and then write it down, and then because now your brain just focuses on all of that.
That is really
it is
key.
True.
That's for real.
Mm-hmm.
Having speaking it out, and
speaking it out, writing it, actually writing it, and creating pictures, collage. I have a vision board here, but that's one way for your body to posture itself towards that direction. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know you did that.
All right, red carpet now on my vision board.
Well, I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait to meet you, Amber, in person.
Oh well, we just have to set a date.
You're such a beautiful person, physically,
Amber,
and personality, and so are you, Rowena. You guys have hearts of gold.
Talk to us quickly about the vision board. How do we create our own vision board?
Yes, thank you.
Well, she's been saying it all along. You have seeds of greatness being planted. You have visions in your mind. It just pops right out, right? Now you capture that and then create it, like just draw it. I was on my way to Tennessee drawing all my visions, like where I want to travel. Greece is one of them, you know, these are the places I want to visit.
Is it like on a dry erase board, on a chalkboard, on a?
Anywhere,
Okay.
anywhere. You can cut out stuff, you can put writing, makes it like real.
Wow.
And then now there's a reticular activating system in a part of your brain that now scans your environment, you know, for all evidence that points out and leads you to that. So your body postures. I'm a physical therapist too. So I tell my patients, you know, how do you want to see yourself in 2 weeks? You know, do you
Wow.
want to stay here? Because now then your brain kind of like wants to get you to where you want to be. Posture,
There's-
6 o'clock.
right.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. It's
Mhm.
like the vision of,
That's
yeah.
right.
I mean, I think that's really, really powerful.
Yeah. So
Well, I mean, honestly,
by the time we meet each other, you have your
This
vision
is-
board.
that became a reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
From a stone, a ruby, and the guy who, you know, couldn't do what he wanted to do back in the day.
Yeah. So the two of you, I know then you're going to have your vision board the next time we meet.
Yes.
That's our
Better-
homework, right? We got to give
Love you,
him
Megan.
That's your
You're
homework.
paying up. You better start paying up, man. I love you, but oh, jeez, Jiminy.
Wow.
Well, Diana, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. You are a true inspiration.
Oh, I love to do it again sometime.
Yes,
well,
with
I
book
mean-
two, with book two. Well,
Yes, definitely. You're so sweet.
and then with the movie.
oh yes, with the movie.
Exactly. The song, the movie. Let's put it all there.
So how
Let's do
can
it.
I? So I think the gentleman initially talked about how. So this is going to be on what different platforms did you say?
So, Odin, if you can jump in and
Sorry, that is such a funny image, isn't it? First, I thought he
And,
was almost
if you
like
had
the
any-
headless
if you
I
horseman.
was
had
doing
anything
my
for it.
thing, sitting back here today, letting the ladies talk for the first time without my voice at all. For the first time, wow! And I did it the whole 2 hours and some minutes.
There you go.
Sounding like Captain Kirk. Yeah. Yeah. You're on about 64 platforms. So. And
There we go.
On more.
Now, is there a link? How do I get the link, or how
I will send it to Rowena. Rowena can
Oh,
just
okay.
go to GERN.TV. GERN-TV on YouTube, and you can
Oh,
grab
okay.
it. Most of the other ones are on streaming live, and we are live
Okay.
currently right now.
Oh,
yes. So no editing. We're all
Oh,
live.
I
Everything.
don't do nothing but live. That's what we
Okay.
were talking about earlier. And people say, well, do we go pre-record? You remember when Dan was talking about that? And I'm like, pre-record? I don't pre-record jack.
Not in his vocabulary.
No, not in my vocabulary, not in my thought process. I'd rather just go live and call it a day.
well, I
Sounds good.
hope I wasn't embarrassing anybody. Or
No, you are amazing. You're amazing.
Oh, it's too late now. Don't worry about it.
okay, well, being in the public 101. Hopefully, I swam and not sunk.
No, you were fantastic.
You were
Thank you
great.
so much,
Trust
Diana.
me, you were
Oh, I
great.
love you guys.
Yeah.
And thank you, Jocelyn,
Thank
Emperor.
Thank you.
The
And
Emperor.
thank you,
Yeah.
Odin.
Yeah, don't call her Jocelyn, call her Amber.
Yes,
That's right.
yes, because
'Cause
she
I'm gonna
amps
have
us
her
all
look.
up.
I'll do once it-
I
Oh,
know.
that right there. She amps us all up. That's good.
Hey, Rowena,
There's
I
power
got a
in
challenge for
words,
Amber.
right?
There you are.
Hey, I got
Yes.
a challenge for Amber now. She's going to have to do a Gary the Mad Martian show. 12 midnight until whenever Gary finishes his show.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
I'd be asleep.
Well,
It's an all-nighter.
he's an
Because
all-nighter.
he has the night shift.
No, he is the night shift on Saturday night.
Okay.
There you go. There you go.
Working on the night shift.
Oh, but he does this every week, religiously.
Oof.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
He's go hard. And he has some of the
He's a
biggest
beacon
hosts.
of hope at night.
Oh, let me tell you, he has some big guests every week, and his information is certified, bona fide, and valid. And it goes so deep that sometimes you have to sit back and say, "Let me ingest this." You know when the truth
Oh,
gets to you
man.
and you just fall asleep? Yeah, it's time
All night long? All night?
Oh yeah.
Where's the, I wouldn't have that energy.
Oh, no. I don't even think
But see, you have to
Uncle
remember,
Joe
I
could
started
do
at
it.
11 a.m.
I don't think Uncle
and
Joe
I
could help
go
me very
all
much either.
Saturday night.
Oh, wow.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Say-
Odin does not sleep.
I tried.
A guy that doesn't sleep.
I try.
Oh,
I
man.
literally, I try. It just doesn't work. I mean, I got what today, 3 hours worth of sleep, got back up, and
Oof.
you already know what I'm doing. I'm working.
Well,
but
thank
hey,
you so
you're on
much.
Global Enlightenment, so I got to keep everybody enlightened, and this is 7 days a week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wow. Yep.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, I love all of you.
Love you too.
And just to remember, don't be Cinderella, create your own future
Hey, girl.
and live happily ever after.
There we are.
Thank you.